Hello everybody, my name is Ep.1 and welcome to a brand new Let's Play series in Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich. So after our failed run, it's safe to say that we failed in our right cam team run, which is very unfortunate. But we got destroyed pretty handily, I would say. But we're going to be playing as National France today. I don't really have a set path we're going to be going down. We've done the absolute monarchy last time. So we'll probably either stay pro-Pétain or we're going to go kind of more Republican. Not too sure which one we'll do. We'll just kind of do the event and we'll see what pops up there. But our goal, of course, is to unify ourselves with France. And we're also going to do the post-war content as well. I don't think I've actually ever done the post-war France content. Usually whenever I beat France, or beat the commune, I guess I should say, to clarify this a little bit. Whenever I beat the commune, that's usually when I just end the series. But we're going to go, and we're actually going to do that post-war content. And probably also maybe go to War of the Reichspakt as well. Maybe we'll win, maybe we'll lose in that situation. But we'll see when we get there. So here we are. It is currently 1936. We have 18 factories, 7, 2, and 9. Actually, a lot of military factories. That has a pretty strong military factory to civilian ratio. So we probably want to get more civilian factories. We'll go into Algiers first. When By Blood Alone came out, they kind of reamped the mechanics around occupied territories, which makes it a lot harder to actually govern territory. Okay? That's something that we're going to have to really keep in mind in this playthrough. One, we're going to immediately go... Let's immediately go to local police force so we can save up some manpower here. We're going to switch you down. We are going to have people rise up against us. That is 100% going to happen. So we want to kind of... we want to be prepared. So we have currently an army of 14 divisions, which is kind of garbage, but you know, that's okay. We can get that fixed up. We got our 14 divisions here. This is 13. Where's our 14th division? It's all the way in Corsica. We don't need to worry about Corsica. I don't think... Yeah, you're a core of ours. So we have, I think, 5 core states. We got Corsica. We got the northern Algerian coast. These 3 states... And I guess so we have 4 states here that will not rise up against us. I don't believe southern Algeria can rise up, but they do have some resistance over here. And then we also have Dakar down here as an actual core state. We have Senegal. So we need to be prepared for these invasions. Well, they're not invasions. I guess they're uprisings. We're gonna have one army stationed, you know, on the coast of Algiers. I think that makes sense. The second army, we're going to have them down in Dakar, just so that if you're not chatting where you got the WWII Empire, we got Niger, Burkina Faso, the Ivory Coast. If any of these countries in the south end up rising up, we can respond with Gold Army here. Then Red Army mostly is just to make sure that Tunisia doesn't get any funny ideas. Okay, national focus. What do we want to go for first? None of these are open to us. Okay, let's do the fate of Equatorial Africa. Our researches, we'll just go with our basics here. But I'll actually go for 1918 weapons as well. Because we might get into combat very early on. That is something that we do have to be aware of. So the situation of France. The Third Republic fell in the same way it became to be, in defeat of the German arms and facing socialist unrest. As the civil war that funneled the Communal Revolution in 1920 eventually came to a close, the government chose exile instead of surrender. Having retreated from Marseille, they embarked with the French Navy towards Algiers, hoping that this temporary situation would soon be resolved and that the newly created Federation of Communists of France would undoubtedly either quickly collapse in on itself or be put down by the Boche. Neither happened, and instead a peace treaty was concluded between the German Empire and the Commune, with little to no regard towards the exiled government. The Commune was recognized as successor of the French Republic by the newly aligned German world, while the exiles remained seen as the legitimate government by those who had fought beside them in the Weltkrieg. But the refugees refused to be cowed. They renewed their claim as the legitimate government of all of France and our empire and their commitment to the Entente, preparing for any opportunity to strike. However, this aftermath of the exile proved highly unstable. Democratic forces proved unable to form a lasting government, instead of descending even further into petty squabbles. A situation made even worse by tension between the exiles and Pied Noir colonists. And in 1926, the army stepped in, declared a state of emergency, and formed a thinly veiled junta under the line of Verdun and Philippe Pétain, supported by the many heroes of the Weltkrieg, such as protege Admiral Georges III Dragalou and General Henry Murdoch. As supreme commander of the French military, which holds a tight grip on the states, Pétain has taken control over France, But the Constitution has neither been amended nor annulled, and as such, the Republic and its institutions continue to exist on paper, though the Parliament does little more than a rubber-stamped decision made by the Marshal and his cadres. Political parties still exist and continue to operate to give the population the illusion of democracy, though very few are idealistic enough to believe they have any real power. The four main political parties are the Radical Party, the ARD, the Democratic Republican Party, the PRD, an alliance born of exiles of various traditional liberal coalition parties. We got the French Social Party, the PSF, and the Action Party, the AF. Or I guess the French Action Party, the AF. Marshal Pétain was convinced that authoritarian rule is needed for the salvation of France. While the prestige of the radicals and the PRD is low, as they are seen as holding a shared responsibility in the defeat of the revolution as their main parties of the Third Republic, they still enjoy some popular support, while the PSF, created after the war by veterans, is seen as many as striking the needed middle way between democracy and a strong rule. As such, banning the parties would create more instability at a time when the Republic cannot afford it. On the other hand, none of the Democratic parties are strong enough to actually impose anything on the Marshal, still widely popular among veterans who see him as the lion of Verdun. While the armed forces see him as the only one who's able to properly prepare France for the fight against the Internationale. But the regime's balancing act cannot last forever. The more democratically minded are beginning to lose confidence in the regime, while the Royalists and Action Française believe that the salvation of France can only come through toppling the Republic and its institutions. And many within the army and among traditional French and native elites are worried and perceptive to. To put it simply, the junta is slowly but surely losing political credibility, and is now mainly held together by the prestige of Pétain. Be careful, to keep resistant to core African characters. Okay, we don't have to worry about this. Well, I mean, we do, but you don't have to worry about it right now. As if this lack of civilian support wasn't enough, trust in the Marshal is starting to erode within the army, the backbone of the regime. Pétain's favoritism towards his protégés have put many in key positions, and though they certainly are competent, many officers are left behind, while others worry that this could encourage doctoral rot. Now, Pétain is surrounding himself with yes-men. Some within the Marshal's entourage have, however, been openly critical of the state of affairs, such as Henry Murdoch, and for now, this discontentment within the army is limited to debate, as many hope that Pétain will eventually listen to his more reform-minded protégés. One thing is clear, however, an escalation of these divisions could prove disastrous for the regime. The most important problem facing the nation, however, is simply its situation, in exile. Though in Algeria, officially annexed as part of France as the overseas department in the late 19th century, exiles and Pays Noirs settlers made a significant part of the population. Make up a significant part of the population. In some major cities, even making up the majority. Overall, Europeans are still a small minority ruling over millions of indigenous, who, despite being considered Frenchmen, are essentially second-class citizens, subject to heavy taxes and forced labor, with rule from Algiers enforced by native elites in the army. Since the defeat in the Ville Creek, the colonial administration is precarious. Unrest is ruthlessly put down. Recent famines are badly managed. Were badly managed. Syndicalists and pan-Arab agents spread propaganda against colonial authorities. However, most traditional indigenous elites are still loyal to France, and there exists a growing class of French-educated natives and native war veterans who, despite wanting reform, remain loyal. One thing is clear: if the government is careless, further unrest, perhaps even revolts, are bound to happen. And I'm not too worried about the native revolts. We should be able to put them down fairly quickly. Our main issue, of course, is both the commune of France, and actually, surprisingly, Egypt at some point in the future. If they end up winning a war against the Ottomans, they could invade us. That is something that we do need to be aware of. Get my Army and Navy experience. Thank you very much. And I don't believe any of these trees unlock until we've actually, Ministry of War, Officers of Tactics with the Gull. We don't, these are like our political stuff. We don't got to worry about those quite yet. We have an election. No, we do not. At least not right yet. Outdated equipment and the NID-32. Small interwar airframe. You are just, I think, a fighter. Large interwar. Why are you outdated? I don't know actually what made you outdated, but you know what? That works out just fine for us. We have 55 steel. That's that's the entirety of our country's domestic supplies, which is kind of like garbage. In a brazen move aimed at stopping Sensi influence amongst our subjects, we sent an detachment of the French army deep into the Sahara to raid their oases. Supported with modern rifles and air support, the Quam stood no chance of stopping us, but they were able to harass the French columns who were retreating back to the deserts. I'm pretty sure this is an event, if I remember correctly, is an event that we're going to see over and over and over again, so we're not going to pay too much mind to it. The death of a friend. His Majesty King George V, by grace of God of the United Kingdom and Great Britain and Ireland and other British dominions beyond the sea, King, defender of the faith, Emperor of India, friend of France, our greatest ally during the Great War, and since our exile, as well as a personal friend of Marshal Pétain, since the two of the men on the battlefield 2 decades ago has died today at 70 years old. Though the situation is unfortunately tense at home, given the magnitude of the event, it is important for the Entente that the Lion attends the funeral of George V and his coronation of his son Edward. And more personally, for Pétain, it is important to mourn a friend and ally, who, like him, oversaw the exile of his people after a bloody revolution in their homelands, and like him, was wholeheartedly dedicated to one day coming back and retake what was rightfully theirs. And so Marshal Pétain embarked on a special transatlantic flight, ready to honor the memory of a friend, but celebrate a new era of Anglo-French friendship. Long live the king. The king is dead. Okay, we got a new king, totalist charter. What do we want to go next? Rebuild the French Sudan. +5 compliance. 25 political power. I'm pretty sure completing this railroad is actually pretty important for us, because I think right now, even though there's these strait crossings, I don't think they actually work, right? Yeah, there's no land routes. Yeah, so these don't work until we actually build the Trans-Saharan Railroad. The fate of equatorial French Africa. For a long time, we've held out hope that the occupation of our previous own colonies by the Germans would be short. Their widespread expansion across the globe may have produced the conditions needed for them to collapse, but the syndicalist regime in the metropole failed to disintegrate. We've been forced to remain entrenched in Algiers, staring daggers at our brothers and sisters across the Mediterranean. Then our long-standing ally, the United Kingdom, fell apart in 1925, leaving us in no condition to return the colonies to our rule. Ending the last of his tenure as Governor General while remains in French Equatorial Africa, Raphael Tonli has made a decision to step down from his post, citing a failing in his health in recent years. Antonetti has held a position since 1924, seeing the region through several turbulent times, and as well as returning his retirement after his service. With the seat left vacant, it may now be time to merge the two colonial sub-Saharan governments into one unified administration. German Empire remains ascendant across the globe, and a split focus on resources allocated is a waste of time and effort. With only a narrow position of our colonial region of Chad remaining in French Equatorial Africa, we must move to merge Chad into the French West Africa administration. Someday our rightful territory might return to us, but that day is not today. So we lose a little bit of political power, we gain 2% stability, which is nice. We're still at -3, which is less nice. The Lion of Canada. After a 60-hour transatlantic flight, Marshal Pétain arrived in Ottawa, greeted by Prime Minister Mackenzie King and a large crowd of Canadians, mostly Quebecois, who see the state visit as a renewal of Anglo-French cooperation. They then drove down to Windsor, where late King Emperor George was asked to be buried. After a grandiose and emotional ceremony, where Pétain was finally able to say farewell to his personal friend and ally, he took a tour of Ontario and Quebec. Reading all along the way was a friend of the Empire for meeting with King Edward VIII. In a pre-planned move, the two men shook hands in front of the media and the world, and a new king declared that no matter the struggles the future holds, the French and British nations would always fight side by side in this great crusade against the syndicalist threat. Later on, the two men had a private talk, discussing current issues facing the Entente, the policies that both men were planning on undertaking, as well as the inevitable prospect of war. The mutual undying commitment of both nations to each other was, of course, renewed, for announcing an even stronger bond within the Entente. Well, thanks for the opinion boost. It doesn't really do too much for us, but I'm happy for it nonetheless. What national spirits do we have? We got internal unrest, which is a -20% stability modifier, as well as a +0.25 political power cost, so very cool on that. Another -15% stability from you, but hey, 7.5% construction speed. Fantastic. And we have anti-communar, which is basically no support for any of the socialist parties, but we do get a 50% war support boost, which is nice. I'm trying to remember, because Black Monday is going to be happening in about 2 weeks' time. And I'm trying to remember what happens to us in that event. Do we get hit by Black Monday? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I don't think it's too bad for us. I'm going to send you over to Marseille. I mean, I guess you'd be able to see in here, right? Supreme Council, Air. Where is our, do we have an economy tree? Always false. Democracy has been restored in France. I guess we don't. I guess the economy tree is just tied with the political tree. I mean, that's fine for me. Also, like, the fact that this this whole focus tree is so spread out is a little surprising. I mean, not surprising. Interesting might be a better word for it. Disagreements within the army. After the Grand Jury, two art schools of thought have emerged among the younger superior officers to explain the military defeat. They both conclude that the defeat was primarily caused by inefficiency, personal feuds, and a general lack of cooperation with the military high command. wasting the bravery and blood of French infantrymen, as well as the strategic and tactical innovation of Philippe Pétain. They disagree on what caused those issues, and most importantly, on what should be done to correct them. Two men have emerged as leaders of these factions within the French army, and both are planning to release books displaying their point of view. They have sent copies to the Marshal in hopes of getting some public support for their work over the opposition. I know one of them, I think, is de Gaulle. I know you need de Gaulle, to go monarchist. So yeah, it's de Gaulle and Murdoch. So Henry Murdoch, nicknamed the Bear, is an infantry general who shot up the ranks during the Great War through sheer bravery and commanding ability. Who are you? I guess you're with Afghanistan, right? At close baton of a long-time critic of military establishment, he believes that war was lost due to his lack of experienced officers and out-of-touch high command. He plans to release a book called Lessons of 1914 and the Next War, detailing his experience of the war and his proposals for the coming war. Among those proposals, the retirement of all officers older than 56 years old and emerging all branches of the armed forces could prove controversial, effectively reorganizing the French forces armée from scratch. Charles de Gaulle, nicknamed the Rooster, recently promoted to the rank of a lieutenant colonel. A fellow veteran of the Great War, his bravery led his men at the Battle of Verdun, before being wounded and captured. Escaping activity, he became a symbol of resistance against German aggression. Particularly ambitious, he became the protege of the line of Verdun and a renowned military theorist, making rather similar observations regarding the defeat as Murdoch, but advocating for greater cooperation rather than reorganization, a greater use of armor with air support, greater autonomy for our officers, and creating alongside our traditional concept of the army a more important core of professional soldiers. These proposals have done a lot to support among the officers, but de Gaulle is planning on releasing another essay, simply entitled The Discord. This essay is simply presented as a collection of observations on the confusion reigning among officers during the war. To some, it seems to endorse the stab-in-the-back theory popular among civilian soldiers and officers alike, especially considering that de Gaulle's proposal to prevent confusion at critical times is the submission of military to moral civilian power. Marshal Pétain could use the support of the publication of either of those books, effectively setting the course of reforms within the armed forces, or simply let the debate run its course. Let's see, what are our two options? We got... So you are, if we go for de Gaulle, division train, 5% attack and defense, 0.5 recruit population. We got some tank bonuses here as well. Thing is, as we are right now in exiled France, we're not going to have a strong armored core. And then I'm assuming if you are... I mean, here's the thing, like, Murdoch's tree is just, like, a lot larger, right? We get free technology, we get free radio tech, that's always nice. Rocket artillery, total artillery, naval experience, total war. What are you? Okay, so it's that the Gaulle's tree is split into 3, and I guess Murdoch's tree is all into one big group. The render limit goes up. 5% factory output's pretty good. You know what? I think last time we did go for de Gaulle, so let's go with the Bear this time. Let's do something radical. We're not going to join up with the Canadians. That's just going to drop our stability even more. We can't really afford that. Clash against the Tuaregs. The war led against the Tuaregs in Niger during the 1910s had been successful, but led to another unsuspected problem. The Tuaregs, having been driven off of the usual roaming lands, have been made to sometimes live in the most inhospitable regions. They're unable to rely on cattle farming like they usually do. They've had to get more creative. This was the reason for their attack this morning on the Nigerian village, close to the river but fertile enough to have farms and reserves. A small Tuareg force arrived at dawn to pillage the farms and steal food reserves, but they didn't anticipate the presence of a small French patrol resting in the village. The French presence wasn't planned. It was only constituted of a few soldiers accompanying a colonial officer, but it was enough to try to stop the Tuaregs. A few shots made one of the horses fall, but the Tuareg tribesman falling on its head. Another Tuareg was shot in the belly, and a French soldier was gravely injured before the force fled and left the village. The French soldiers got to congratulate themselves before leaving to help their wounded friend. The village, however, had to rebuild on its own. Okay, and then they get more pissed off at us. But I think it's going to be a good time for us to end this episode for today. So thanks everybody for watching. My name is Anthony. If you enjoyed, run a thumbs up. Not enjoying, click thumb down. If you want to see more, subscribe, and goodbye.